ICQ Podcast episode 307, Rola Masts and Handheld Programming Guide. Well, hello fellow Arrl Radio enthusiasts, and welcome to this, our 307th episode of the ICQ Arrl Radio Podcast. Supported this episode by an anonymous donor from UK Hamfest, along with our monthly and annual subscription donors. So this is obviously one of our companion shows outside of Sync, and in this episode we've got features including rolling masts and handheld radio programming guides. So guys, hope you enjoy. But before we head over to that part of the show, a few announcements for you just to keep you up to date with the latest news happening in the hobby, say over the last week. So first off, in Holland we've got changes to the ham radio call sign policy. Now, these are changes which have happened since they made some changes at the start of the year. So just to recap, actually start of 2018. So they said that a call sign can only be issued and linked to one person. A person to whom the call sign has previously issued can request a call sign back again. And it's only possible to request previously issued call sign names. This makes it possible to request not yet issued call sign in the PA0 series. So that was what they did back in January 2020. So what they've now done from the 1st of October, they've introduced some minor changes. And the important adjustments are that special call letters are issued for the duration of the event. This was a maximum of 28 days, but it's now possible to get the special event call sign letters now for a maximum of 1 year. Until January 2020, that's the 1st of January 2020, you can request special call letters up to 3 weeks in advance via the customer portal. However, from the 1st of January, it's now possible via the customer portal to request until 1 day before the start of the event or the radio competition. So they're shortening down there the time it takes to allocate those call signs in Holland going forward. News there from Holland in relation to call sign changes. Now, Dad, you've got some information on the Arrl online auction.
Yeah, the Arrl are running an online auction which begins on the 17th of October. They have 230 items up for bids, and this is an online auction, so you'll need to go to the Arrl website and get the information from there. But there's a preview is going to start showing on the 14th of October, and because the Arrl buy equipment and then review it and then sell it on or put it up for auction, most of this equipment, if it isn't brand new, is going to have no more than a few hours of use on it. It's the review model. I reckon that's probably worth a premium, in fairness. But lots of things and up for sale, including the sold out 2019 handbook, the box set. So there's a few of those in the auction. And I think this could be well worth a look. So if you, certainly in the States, but other parts of the world, if you're interested, go have a look at their website, which is arrlauctionanything.com. So therefore, you can have a good look round and maybe place a bid on your favourite item. Back to you, Colin.
Now, after hearing about that Arrl box set you just mentioned out, I've got a cold sweat that our American colleagues on the podcast might buy that for me and give it to me in my next trip to America and ask me to bring it back in hand luggage like you guys do when I'm in Friedrichshafen. But there you go. Okay, so next news story here. We've been told listener David Webb has let us know about an event that's taking place. It's the Excise Blue Ham. It's taking place over the weekend of the 12th and 13th of October, so next weekend as we release. And on the dates, the Royal Air Force Air Cadets will be organising and running military-style national radio exercise called Excise Blue Ham 19. It's in conjunction with other arms of the Cadet Force, the Army, Sea and the Combined Cadet Force will be taking part from there. They're looking for full licensed amateur radio operators to take part and to make contact with the special call signs during the weekend. The exercise will take place on the MOD's 5 MHz 60 metre share band and will be on a section of the band that amateurs are authorised to use. They obviously check the licensing conditions in the band plan. PSK31 data mode will be available, as well as Olivia signal may also be used. So what we're going to do is we're going to put all the information about frequency, etc. on the ICQ podcast website for you to get involved. There's a website as well if you want to check it out, and that's alphacharlie.org.uk/exercise-blue-ham. I say to check that out and get involved. So as I say, I'm sure our listeners in the UK full licenses will do their best to give a helping hand next weekend. So there's interesting activity going on down on the south coast with repeaters.
Certainly is, Colin. And I was actually able to talk to Carl Brazio, G7AFT, from Yaesu Technical Support, and you often see Carl at the rallies. But he was saying that the South Hampshire repeater group have actually, along the south coast of England, there's a bit of a dead spot between Portsmouth and Southampton, my belief is. And what they've done is they've actually got a microwave link between the two sites. So they've connected a 5 gigahertz microwave link between the two sites, which covers a 13-mile hop, and it's got 100 megabits across it, so there's no problems at all, because the repeater only uses about half a megabit to send the voice data across. But that means that if you're driving from Southampton to Portsmouth or vice versa, have the two repeaters plugged into or programmed into your radio, and when one gets a bit raggy, you just switch to the other. But you'll be coming out on both repeaters at the same time, because these are internet linked. And it's very interesting. The repeater group there and ahed on what method of digital to use. They did think about DMR and D-Star, but decided to go with Fusion, which is good in my book, seeing as I have Fusion in the car. But all in all, I think the network, and I may be jumping the gun here, boys, and I apologise if I am, but Carl was kind of intimating that they're thinking or hoping that other repeater keepers will join in, and if you can get a 5 gig link dish between you and the next site, maybe we can link up a lot of repeaters around the UK without having to use the internet. So there you go, Colin. I think this is very interesting, and maybe I'll catch hold of the guys and get them to give us a more in-depth technical interview on this. I know Carl was talking to me on this. So back to you.
Yeah, perfect. So there you go. That's one for your to-do list. Right, so now head over to our interviews for this episode. So say we've got interviews talking about Rola Masts, DMR digital radio, network radio, handheld programming guides, and also headphones in this episode. So it's a collection of things we've either picked up at Handfest or we've had brewing away in the background for the last few weeks. So guys, a little bit for everybody in the next few minutes. Hope you enjoy, and we'll catch you on the other side of the interviews. See you soon.
The ICQ Podcast. Getting it said for amateur radio.
For this feature, I had an interesting book come my way. The gentleman contacted me and asked me to review it, and in fairness, as long as he complied with our review situation on our website, we were more than happy to do it. The book will have to stand by its own merit, and this review will be done fair and give you the comments on what I've found. The book in question is called the Handheld Radio Field Guide. Its subtitle is Front Panel Programming Instructions for Ham Radio HTs. Now, this book is written by Mr. Alan Cornwell. Now, I should have got Alan's call sign, which is KF7CCC or VE1CCC. Alan is involved in emergency services, and that's why he's written this book. Now, going forward, the book itself is about 270 odd pages. It's more of a reference book. The book size is about 10 inches by 7, or in old money when I went to school anyway, Currently, for those of you a bit younger than me, 25.5 centimetres by 18 centimetres approximately. The book, as I say, covers a number of things. At the start of the book, there are some interesting chapters that will help you gain more information from the history of some of these handy talkies. So the first chapter is about an introduction where Alan writes the introduction of why he decided to do this book, and that explains quite nicely. He then asks for a plea for sanity, and I agree with him in this way, because just about every manufacturer and every programming, people don't do it consistently. We don't have a standard. If we had a standard for programming radios, then it wouldn't be as horrendously complicated as it pretty much is. And even when you buy programming cables, every manufacturer does it slightly different, calls different functions different names, and that does become a bit of a problem. So that's the plea for sanity, is Alan's suggestion of how things should be done. Next chapter is what is a VFO? And really, it's an interesting title to just grab your attention. Alan's listed some of the major terms for an HT. So if you're new to the hobby, or you're just starting out and you buy this book because you want to know what one to buy, then that might give you some help in determining what some of these functions are. Moving down, dead battery blues. Well, Alan talked about the battery technology and how it's developed over the last 20 to 30 years. Moving on from NiCas to nickel hydride to iron batteries, and as I say, going forward, the advantages of those. And one of the good points he makes is, if you're going to be involved in an emergency services type thing, then why not get yourself a battery pack that takes standard AA or AAA batteries? Most manufacturers make a battery pack that will go on the back of your radio that will use standard off-the-shelf batteries, so you are never going to be in a situation where your radio runs out. If you have a spare battery pack with you, you can then slip some more batteries into the pack. There was a section on My Radio Has No Buttons, and that was quite interesting, and that really just takes you forward from some of the very early handy talkies and why they cannot be programmed from the front panel. So it rather fills in the history. And the last chapter, which I found very interesting before it gets on to individual radios, is I don't speak Chinese, Korean, or etc. And when you reset, say, a Chinese radio, it'll come up in Chinese. And if you look at the menus, you're thinking, what's this and what's that? Alan's put a few notes into how to get the radio back onto English language. So that's very, very useful, I would suggest. Now, the main feature of the book is we're going to program these radios from the front panel. We're not expecting you to have a programming cable. So Alan's gone through, and he's done a number of radios, and I think there's about 70-odd radios in this book, where Alan has gone through and done a quick specification of the radio, telling you what it will do, what frequencies it will cover. There's a nice picture of the radio, in most cases, with the controls labelled, so arrows pointing to the buttons, knobs, and various devices that you have to use to program them. And then there's a how to program the radio in the field. So if you turn up at an emergency services RAIN MCOM or whatever, you may very well wish to program your radio to a different repeater or a different set of frequencies. And this tells you how to do it from the front panel. So that's what the whole thing's meant for. And then there are a few more bits of information on other useful things that the radio can do. A few of the extra things that you may wish to do if you're out and about from the front panel. Now, who's this book aimed at? Well, I kind of think it's not really aimed at somebody who's going to pick the book up and read from cover to cover. This is a reference book, in my opinion, and it should be used as such. People that are going to get the most use out of this are services like Raynet, Races, Aries, and anybody else who does events where, half your members could turn up with any type of radio and you've got to program it to be available on your set of frequencies. So that's the sort of book that this is for, is to get multiple people with multiple different radios all working on the same frequency together. I think it would be quite good as a club library book. Reason for that is you got new members turning up or people coming up and saying, how do I do this? So if you've got a club library, this is probably a very good book to put in the club library. Repair shops, not quite so much, but why not? If you're a repair shop, you might want to just be able to prove that certain things work and you know how to do it before you hand the radio back to the customer. So that could be very useful to you. Also, users who go around handfests and rallies looking for a bargain. You see these handy talkies, you don't know how to program them or whatever. If you're going to buy a radio, why not have a reference guide with you that allows you to check at least minimum functionality so that you know that what you're buying is working. So that's another option. I'm not saying it's the best option, but it's another option. And sometimes you can't find the manuals online. So if you can't find a manual online, the radio may very well be covered in this book. Now, in fairness, Alan's on a thankless task here in some ways, because there are new radios coming out all the time. There are a lot of old radios that let's face it, sometimes we have an old radio that we cherish. We love it to bits. We cherish it. And I have one, a handy talkie, and every now and again I get it out and use it. And I struggle to remember how to work it, some of the functionality on it, but we all do it. So this book is either only going to grow in size, or what will happen is that as time goes on, older radios will drop out the bottom and new ones will come in. So I'm hoping that Alan's going to keep this up to date and have different reviews every so many years. So in conclusion, this is a reference book. It's not something you're going to read from cover to cover. But it's still a very interesting book. Not all HTs are covered, but it's a good starting point. It covers most of the interesting models available, both new and on the second-hand market. As I said, though, new radios will be coming out all the time, so you're going to have to look. Price, I can't give you a price on this, because when I checked for the price on the internet, I found so many variants of where you buy it. So all I can suggest is you either contact Alan direct, call sign is KF7CCC or VE1CCC, or check out your favourite place to purchase books on the internet. And all in all, I think this is a very, very useful reference book. Hope this has been of use to some of you. I'm with Chris Taylor from Moonraker. Hi, Chris.
Morning, Martin. I hope you're having a good show.
We're ducking and diving as always and having a good show. I've known Chris probably the best part of 20 years, and we worked together at one point in time. But you've got some new products to show me today, haven't you?
Certainly have, yep. We've got a couple of new products. We've got a new radio, the Anytone 578, and we've got a new product unique to the amateur market called Rola Tube. All the details are on our website, and if I show you very quickly, this here is a 7-metre mast, and it just very lightweight. And if I put it up, there you go, that's 7 metres, and it's a solid fiberglass mast, If you guy it down, it will take a 5k head load, so you can put wires on it, cameras, and what have you. And we're doing various versions. For a complete kit, you're looking at about £700 upwards, but it's the sort of thing you'll still be using in 20 or 30 years' time. And if a club buy it as a portable aerial, great for field days and what have you. The 7 metre is the longest one that's practical, so you've got to think that when you put in HF aerials up, and away you go.
The thing I like about it, Chris, is that, yeah, it's extremely portable. Probably a bit too heavy for SOTA, but for an emergency, the Rainet people, for commercial usage as well. This is not just a product for amateur radio. I can see a lot of potential from commercial.
Yeah, absolutely. However, the 5 metre kit is specifically made for lightweight operation, and that's a slightly lighter duty one, and that will all fit in a rucksack. So that's the mast, the guy ropes, and the base plate, so everything you need to put it up will go in your rucksack. So if you've got that and an 817 and a bit of ingenuity, you can cover all bands HF up to 2 metres. So so that's quite a good option, and that's the one that's about 700 quid.
That sounds interesting. And you got a nice bright colour one. Is that just for show, or are they all going to be a bright orange?
So it notices, and so it matches your T-shirt, so you come and have a look at it. But the stock colours are orange, blue, black and camouflage. The reason the orange one is it's popular for airfields for putting up a temporary installation, and obviously if a helicopter's coming in, it needs to be aware it's there, so it's highly visible and things like that. So that's why it's that colour, or that option.
Right. Well, I did think it was our shirts you were trying to match, but that's good fun. Okay. So that's great. It looks an interesting piece of kit. Now, your new radio. Yeah, what's the functionality on your new radio? What extra functionality you got?
Well, first of all, it's a Dual Band DMR radio, and I know there are other ones of those around, but this one's got unique features. It's got real Bluetooth, and by that, I've got a transit van for the show. I just plugged it in the car lighter, paired it, and I was talking total hands-free. The PTT is Bluetooth as well, but that doesn't connect to the system, that connects to the radio. So you've got a PTT button on your steering wheel or your gear stick, you touch it, goes into transmit, you touch it again, it goes back to receive. So it's the first ever ham radio solution for hands-free, and it does 50 watts 2 and 70, it does DMR, it does crossband repeat. It'll do analog to DMR, DMR to DMR, and DMR to analog. So perfect for organisations like Rainet and what have you. And it's got a few other features which at the moment they haven't released, but there's a remote display that will come out next year, which is a Bluetooth display. You just put it on the dashboard and it mimics the display of the radio, so you can see what's going on. So that we've got. The first sample arrived on Thursday even, so I bought it yesterday, and officially it launches today. We should have deliveries by the end of October, so come and have a look and what have you. And of course it's fully programmed. We do a unique item on all the DMR radios. When you buy it, we program it with your call sign and every analog and DMR repeater in the country, even the handhelds, and in fact we're releasing a new code plug today. So if you've got an Anytone radio, come to the stand and we program it free of charge. Simple as that. But yeah, so that's a very exciting product. And the good news is it's 350 quid, including all the Bluetooth. Now if you look at the other manufacturers, their Bluetooth's an option, and you don't see a lot of change out at 200 quid, and it doesn't work with the car. It only works with their proprietary headsets. So so it can be very popular.
Yeah, I think so, because I must admit I've also gone back to playing with DMR. I did DMR in the commercial industry, and I started looking again at DMR and code plugs for Motorola's not so long ago. And there's a lot you can do with DMR. I mean, and equally, it's not just DMR, because of the gateways now, like CQ UK, that you can DMR through, and I've had contacts with people on DMR. I'm on running DMR and they're running Fusion through the gateway, so there's a lot you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. The cross-moding. There are two networks really. One of them is the what I call proper conventional DMR networks. So you got in the UK Brandmeister, Phoenix, Southwest Cluster, the Northern Cluster, and things like that. But you've also got a whole new network of hotspotters, and these are people that have bought a hotspot, whether it's a jumbo spot or a Zum spot or whatever, connected it to their internet or their mobile, and they're running from home with a repeater effectively in their front room. And that market is huge. And Radcom just recently done a review of the 878, and since that we've been inundated with people that have discovered this new world that we can't all get big aerials up. If you can get a hotspot indoors with DMR or Fusion or D-Star, the world's your oyster. It's great. So yeah.
Certainly is, and I must admit I've got a hotspot now as well, and I've joined the Cyprus net a few times because I know the boys out in Cyprus and I enjoy their company. So it's a way of getting on a net the other side of the world that you'd never be able to do in the old days.
Absolutely, yeah, indeed, yeah, it's good. Yeah. So yeah, we've got all those today on the stand. So yeah, come and have a chat to us and be great.
Yeah, sounds good. Now the last thing we were really going to talk about today is you guys are big into retail of network radio. Now, I don't care what people think. I still think network radio is a good product and has its place in the market and something we should embrace because it is RF regardless of what people think. Isn't it, Chris?
Well, it is. I mean, at the end of the day, radio amateurs love to talk. And, you know, whether it be you go to the radio club, people sit and talk. You go on the radio, people sit and talk. But there will come a time in your life when you end up in a flat or a care home or whatever it might be. You can't have aerials, and people they're not frightened of RF, but it does panic some people. And my mum was in a care home, and I remember going in there to see her one day, and I had a walkie-talkie, and they said to me before I came through the door, turn it off. And just because they're frightened because it's radio. So when you look at the network radio, the reason it really exploded in the marketplace was, number one, you could talk to people all over the country, and didn't cost a lot. Most people were running it on their phones, which they got unused data anyway. And the other thing is the ease of operation. Again, it's Bluetooth, it connects to your car, so there's no aerials needed on the car, so if you've got a company car, you can keep in touch. The other markets that are using it, we sell commercially probably 200 or 300 units a month to taxi companies, farmers, hauliers and what have you, and they all use network radio, and if they've got cellular coverage then they're on the network radio. So that means a truck driver that's going to Sweden to do a delivery can be in touch with base all the way across Europe without any cost to their employer. So yeah, that's why it's taking off really.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, in the old days when you had the trunk to mobile system, it used to cost people an absolute fortune, and they couldn't be across Europe, so that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so, you know, whether it be a handheld you want or a radio in the car, it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but for a lot of people, it's their, I suppose, almost modern day CB. I get, yesterday we had visitors from the radio network people, and they all camped out, about 20 of them last night. Hopefully they stayed dry. And they got together the same as we do, and they all meet up, and I hear them in the shop. We have them on sometimes. They're on every morning chatting about everyday life, and amateur radio isn't for them, but network radio is. And so it might, as I say, might not be everybody's cup of tea, but some people it's become as important to them as amateur radio is to me or to you or what have you. And amateur radio for me is about communications. And I just look at it like a screwdriver for a carpenter. It's just another tool in the communications toolbox. And ICOM have released a commercial network radio, and if you look at their PTT system, they're all over the country. You go into big supermarkets, they're using the ICOMs and what have you, and it's just got a SIM in it, and that's it, it works. And we all know cellular's everywhere, so yeah, network radio is great, and I'm glad that we've been in it from the birth of it in the UK.
Yeah, I agree with you. So that's a good one, and at least it gets people involved. Just finishing up here, give our listeners where they'll find you, website and that sort of thing, Chris.
Okay, the website's moonraker.eu, and if you go on there, it'll tell you all the brands we do and everything, and just if you hope you don't mind me mentioning, we're now official MFJ UK distributors, and that's why we've got an MFJ stand opposite our stand. It's a Moonraker MFJ stand. We think that one product is worthy of its own stand, because there's not a radio amateur in the world that doesn't know what MFJ is. So
Yeah, and for those of us, and I know you have, but for those who have met Martin Dew, lovely gentleman. He's a real nice gent, isn't he?
Absolutely, he's really passionate, and if someone says an idea for a product, before he says another word, he writes it down on a bit of paper and he sticks it on his office wall, and that will become a product. And if you can think of something you want to do in amateur radio, if MFJ aren't doing it, they're going to do it. Simple as that.
Yeah. Well, listen, Chris, the show's about to open. I'm going to say thank you very much for your time, and have a good show.
Thanks very much, and thanks for stopping by. And,
cheers.
I'll get my sunglasses off now to take the glare off your shirt. Cheers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, cheers.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
Hi guys, just a very, very quick review. While I was out in Dayton, I usually wander around and talk to the suppliers, and one of the suppliers I spoke to was Graham from BHI. Now, I've known Graham quite a while now, and we normally tip up and say hi, and he tells us if there's any new products, and we obviously bring the information to you. This time, Graham told me about a set of headphones he had, and quite interesting because BHI are known for noise cancelling products, but these aren't noise cancelling. And he said to me he'd been looking in the market because there wasn't a good set of headphones at a reasonable price, if you remember from our interview with him. So anyway, I come back from the States, and one of my set of headphones fall apart. The plastic had given way, as plastic does eventually. So I needed to buy a new set of headphones, and I thought, I don't know, maybe I'll get myself a set of these BHI ones. They look good, they look very good on the stand, so let's give them a really good try. Father's Day is coming up in about just over a week's time, and my daughter said, "Oh, don't worry, Dad, I'll buy you a set for your Father's Day present and you can have them early." So a set of headphones was ordered from BHI, and they're the BHI HP ones. Arrived within a couple of days. Now, that's not a lot you can say about a set of headphones, apart from they fit nice, they're comfortable. I used them for editing the podcast this time around, and thoroughly enjoyed them. They've got soft ear pads, so they're not uncomfortable, they don't feel sticky. They're not noise cancelling, like I told you. However, they do tend to block out a lot of background noise, so I assume there is a reasonable amount of padding in the ear cups themselves. Now, they are 32 ohm impedance, which is the standard these days for a lot of mobile devices like phones, MP3 players and things like that. And they do have a frequency response according to the box of 20 Hz to 20 kHz, making them general purpose headphones and not specifically for radio. Though that could be a downside, because I asked Mrs. B what she thought, and she tried listening to some music, and I almost didn't get them back. So, guys, just be careful if you want to buy yourself a pair for radio use. You may lose them for other things. If you've got children or XYLs, you may very, very well lose them for other things. In all honesty, they fold down quite nice into a small bag. Mine came in a clear plastic bag inside the box, suitable for keeping it dry if you're taking out soda hilltopping, and they fold down into quite a small space. So all in all, I'm quite pleased with the way ones I got. Not a lot you can say about headphones. They're the right sort of price, UK £20, which is probably about $25 in the US. So, in fairness, if you're looking for a set of general purpose headphones that you might want to convince the family they're for radio so you can keep them for radio, the BHI HP1 headphones certainly look worth a look. And in my case, mine got the Mrs. B seal of approval. I had to get them back off her, and at some point in time, probably at Newark, I'll get another set for her so that she can have a set as well. I hope this feature was of interest. Thank you very much.
The ICQ Amateur Ham Radio Podcast, serving the amateur ham radio community fortnightly since 2008.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed our collection of interviews that we've either picked up at Hamfest 2019, or say we've had sitting in the ready to go bucket for the last couple of weeks. And so I'm sure there was something for everybody in that little collection there. Some feedback that's come in over the last couple of weeks as well. So we got a comment from Quentin, and it was in relation to our news story about ham radio stations database. Whilst it understands there's 421,000 station licenses in Japan, how many call signs are there in Japan? How many radio amateurs? So I know this is one, I'll pick this one because I know this is one I've actually spoken to Ed Durant DD5 Lima Papa about in the past, and I had a perception that the most radio amateurs were actually licensed in the States, but Ed was telling me the fact that he believes that there could be as many as 2 million amateur radio operators in Japan. But as I couldn't find a definitive number for you. So as I say, I suppose there's some figure between 400,000 and potentially 2 million. I know the Tokyo ham radio show is supposed to be very much on par with Dayton Hamvention, so it certainly is very big there, and of course with all the manufacturers there in Japan, it probably would make a bit of sense. Very popular rurally as a hobby still, so I say it could be somewhat up around the 2 million mark there, Quentin, just to help you out with that piece of information. And then picking up on episode 305, the Rob Sherwood engineering interview. And Fred contacts Fred Friedel and says he agrees with Rob that receivers have evolved to an amazing point. Not much difference in the top 10 to 15 radios, especially on SSB. Transmitters is where the new emphasis should be now. Too many rigs today, splatter, he says. So I think that pretty much picks up upon what a lot of us believe, that isn't it? That don't get me wrong, the 101D is very beautiful. The new Kenwood and the new Icon are very beautiful rigs as well. But really, you really are down to the last 1 or 2 percentage points, aren't you, as a difference? And maybe it's more about your antenna, etc. That's going to give you the gain. And then Rob was saying the same thing that Rob was showing engineering, rather than splashing out a big bucket load of money on the next shiny rig.
Yeah, it's always the antenna, Colin. It's always the antenna, and there is a logic. And I know that we always talk to foundation license holders, but if you've got £100 or $100 to spend 90 on the antenna and 10 on the radio, in that sort of environment. However, yeah, decent antenna will certainly work. However, I still come back to these days, and kind of what Rob said was, it almost comes down to eye candy for the top, say, 15 rigs. And unless you are a serious DXer or contester, it really does come down to which one is the most eye candy for you, because there's very little performance difference between, say, the top 15. And that's where I would go with that. On the Japanese, just quickly on the Japanese licenses, I believe, as Ed does, that there are well over 1 million licensed amateurs in Japan. And this is proved out because there's a lot of amateurs in Japan that are limited to 10 watts. And that is why a lot of rigs, and you'll come across them occasionally, there's a 10 watt version. Certainly Yaesu and ICOM have made 10 watt versions of their radios, and sometimes they make it out of Japan to the bigger market. sometimes they don't. The classic example of mine is the ICOM 703, who was probably designed for the Japanese market and then being a QRP rig released to the rest of the world. I used to own an FT 707 Yaesu rig, 100 watt, manufactured around about the late 70s, and there was a 10 watt version of that. You could have bought a 10 watt version of that. It was specifically made for 10 watts. So, the Japanese market is interesting, and they are very big, Colin.
I think the other thing as well is, and people who maybe follow their sport and probably know at the moment that the Rugby World Cup's happening in Japan. I spotted a stat the other day, and I never knew this, that the population in Japan is 126 million. Never conceived it was that populated. So it just shows you on numbers. I say it's very possible on that there. So I thought it was probably about half that in terms of population, maybe around the size of the UK population. So certainly of interest there. Going back to what you're saying about iCandy, one of the comments on the YouTube video that we produced on the Yaesu update of the 200 watt version of the 101, someone had put underneath that they had gone to Handfest, they had a play with the dials and the knobs, etc., and then went off and brought an ICOM rig. So whilst obviously it's disappointing for our friends at Yaesu UK, but I know our friends in ICOM USA will be very happy to hear that they've sold a rig based upon iCandy. But I think that's what it comes down to. It's that confirmation that Rob says. It really is down to, can you, if you're putting down that sort of money, can you love it? And I think that's pretty much that case from there.
Yeah, and the other thing is, and I don't know how many hams picked up on this, and they should have done. Cambridge Hams were at the UK Ham Fest, and they're a very active group that go out. They have their vehicle called Flossie, and there is a video, we did a video on it, but Flossie has a 60-foot mast that comes out the roof of the vehicle and normally has a massive great antenna on the top, usually a cobweb, but massive anyway. This year, Yaesu and Cambridge Hams agreed to put an FT DX101 in the van. So you weren't just sitting at the show and going, well, yeah, it looks very nice, but does it work? You could have gone across to the Cambridge Hams and had a session in Flossie in front of an FT DX101. So, that's something new. I don't know how well it was published, and I don't know how many members of our listeners actually had a go, but just something different.
Well, if you're in the UK and you're going to UK Hamfest next weekend for when we release, Flossie will be there, and that radio may still be in the in the wagon, so you can check it out and go from there. So certainly from there. Well, we mentioned the YouTube videos we produced from UK Hamfest. Best way of checking those out is to visit youtube.com/ICQ podcast. And I said, there's new videos there for you to check out to visualize, see the features we've done obviously in the last episode and the discussions we had there about the rolling mast with Chris Taylor from Moonraker. They'll be there for you as well, so you can actually see what we saw as well. So feel free to check those out for you at the same time. As always, subscribe to the newsletter on the website, icqpodcast.com, where, as I say, you can make sure you get the latest news information from there. And, of course, remember us by donating and keeping your amateur radio show advert-free by visiting icqpodcast.com/donate. Or, as I say, what you send keeps us advert-free. As I say, it is interesting when you talk to people at places like Hampshire, or be, there is an appreciation for the fact that we don't run adverts, but to not run adverts, we need to obviously pay hosting costs, etc. So, as I say, whatever you find value in the show, if you can pop along to, the donation page and send us a donation, we really would appreciate it. Okay, that about wraps up this extra episode. So I'm just going to remind you, Dad, as I say, because I know last time it was a chicken dinner and a glass of wine for Mrs. B, but this time I'm going to suggest a cup of tea and a biscuit might be in order. As I say, we're back in our normal station, so I'm going to let you head off and make that for Mum and catch up with you again only in a few days' time. I'll be over in the UK as we attend RSGB HF convention, so I shall certainly see you then.
Yeah, no problems at all, Colin, and a lot going on. Yeah, I'll go and make your mum a cup of tea, find her a chocolate biscuit when she comes in from work. But I will say, Mrs. B enjoyed her time at Newark, and she met a few people, and I don't think she she let many people through the door without taking a leaflet from her. So yeah, it was good fun and nice to have your mum out with us and in an orange shirt as well.
Exactly so. So look, guys, 73 is all, and we'll catch you again in a week's time. See you then.
Yeah, 73.